The message came through official channels, but everyone knew what it meant. The Vrelian Consortium had run out of patience with New Jeju Colony, and more importantly, they had run out of patience with Captain Ji-won Park. She stood in the command center, reading the intercepted transmission on the holographic display. Around her, the other colonists watched in silence. The message was simple and brutal. The Vrelians had hired a Krath hunter. Target: 1 human female, military advisor, currently stationed at New Jeju Colony. Timeline: 3 days. Payment: substantial enough to make every mercenary in the sector jealous. "They're really doing this," said Tae-sung, her second-in-command. He was a good soldier, but Ji-won could see the fear in his eyes. Everyone had heard stories about the Krath. Everyone knew what it meant when they accepted a contract. Ji-won closed the display and turned to face her team. She was 34 years old, average height for a human woman, with scars on her hands from 2 years of building defenses in hostile territory. Nothing about her appearance suggested she could survive what was coming. That was exactly how she preferred it. "I need to leave the colony," she said calmly. "If the Krath comes here looking for me, people will die. Innocent people. Children." "You can't go out there alone," Tae-sung protested. "The forest will kill you before the Krath even arrives." Ji-won almost smiled. The forest. Everyone called it that, but New Jeju's wilderness was nothing like the forest of Earth. The trees glowed with bioluminescence at night, beautiful and deadly. Their sap could burn through standard protective gear. The rain was acidic enough to strip paint from buildings. The local wildlife had already killed 17 colonists in the past year, despite all their precautions and weapons. "The forest is exactly where I need to be," Ji-won said. She walked to the equipment locker and began pulling out her field gear, her combat vest worn and patched, her rifle modified for the local conditions, her survival pack stuffed with everything she had learned to need in 2 years of exploring this hostile world. "Captain, this is suicide," another officer said. "Krath are apex predators from a death world. They've never failed a hunt. Never. Not in 500 years of recorded contracts." Ji-won checked her rifle's charge and slung it over her shoulder. "Then I guess it's time someone changed that record." She knew the statistics. She had read everything available about the Krath during the 3 hours since the message arrived. They came from a planet with gravity more than twice Earth's standard. They had 8 limbs, natural armor plating, thermal vision that could track prey through walls, and regenerative abilities that made them almost impossible to kill. They were patient, intelligent, and absolutely relentless. The particular Krath coming for her was named Vel. The dossier said Vel had completed 43 contracts without failure. Vel had hunted on ice worlds and lava planets, in vacuum and underwater, against prey that ranged from cunning politicians to cybernetically enhanced soldiers. Nothing had ever escaped. Ji-won finished loading her pack. The other colonists watched her with expressions mixing respect and pity. They thought she was going to die. They were probably right. But Ji-won had learned something important during her years in the military and her time on New Jeju. Survival wasn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It was about being too stubborn to quit and smart enough to use every advantage, no matter how small. "When does it arrive?" Tae-sung asked quietly. "Ship entered the system 2 hours ago," Ji-won replied. "Vel will be planet-side within the next 6 hours. I need to be deep in the wilderness before then." She turned to face her team one last time. "Listen carefully. Keep the colony locked down. Don't send anyone looking for me. Don't try to help. If I survive, I'll come back. If I don't, make sure the Vrelians know it cost them more than they expected." Tae-sung stepped forward and gripped her shoulder. "Good hunting, Captain." Ji-won appreciated the irony. "I'm not the hunter here, but maybe that's the advantage." She left through the eastern gate just as the sun began to set. The colony's walls fell away behind her, and the wilderness of New Jeju opened up ahead. The trees started their nightly glow, casting everything in shades of blue and green. Somewhere in the distance, something howled. It wasn't a sound that belonged to any earth animal. Ji-won moved quickly through the underbrush, her boots finding the safe paths she had memorized over months of patrols. She knew this terrain. She had mapped it, studied it, learned its moods and dangers. The Krath was stronger, faster, and more experienced at hunting. But Jiwan had 2 years of experience surviving in this specific hell, and that would have to be enough. 3 hours into her journey, she found the first position she had prepared. It was a small cave, hidden behind thick vegetation with multiple escape routes and a clear view of the approaches. She wouldn't stay here long. This was just the first move in what she hoped would be a very long game. Jiwan set up her portable sensor net and checked the feeds. Nothing yet. Vel's ship had landed near the colony, right on schedule. The Krath would visit the colony first, gather information, confirm the target's last known location. Standard procedure. It would buy her a few more hours. She pulled out her personal recorder and pressed the button. Message for Tae-sung Kim in case I don't make it back. Tell the colony that humans didn't get to the stars by being the toughest species. We got here by being persistent, by adapting, by using our brains when our bodies weren't enough. The Krath are hunters, yes. But humans, we're survivors. And survivors fight dirty. She ended the recording and settled in to wait. Somewhere out there, a 4-meter-tall apex predator was beginning its hunt. Somewhere out there, the most efficient killer in known space was tracking her trail. Jiwan checked her rifle one more time and smiled without humor. The Krath had never failed a hunt. But the Krath had never hunted a human on human terms before. They had never faced prey that refused to run, refused to fight fair, and absolutely refused to die. The hunt was on, and Jiwan Park intended to teach the galaxy's perfect predator exactly what it meant to corner a human being. Fel arrived at the human colony just after dark. The Krath moved with the confidence of a creature that had never known defeat. 4 meters of armored muscle, 8 limbs that could tear through reinforced steel, thermal vision that painted the world in shades of heat and cold. The humans at the gate took one look and stepped aside. The colony commander, the one called Tae-sung, met Vel in the central plaza. He was afraid. Vel could smell it, could see his elevated heart rate in the thermal spectrum, but the human stood his ground. Interesting. She left 6 hours ago, Tae-sung said without being asked. Headed east into the wilderness. Vel studied the human male. You give up your commander easily. I'm not giving her up, Tae-sung replied. I'm telling you where she went because she ordered me to. Captain Park doesn't run from fights. She picks the battlefield. Vel tilted its massive head, considering. Your captain will die regardless of which ground she chooses. Maybe, Tae-sung said. But she'll make you work for it. The Krath left the colony without another word. Vel had the target's last known position, her equipment profile, and her biological signature. The hunt would be brief. It always was. The wilderness of New Jeju was hostile, but Vel barely noticed. The Krath homeworld made this planet look like a vacation resort. The glowing trees, the acidic rain, the predatory wildlife that the humans feared so much. Vel had hunted in environments that would kill these creatures in minutes. The tracking began at the colony's eastern perimeter. G1's trail was clear to Vel's enhanced senses. Broken vegetation, disturbed soil, the faint heat signature of her passage still lingering in the ground. She had moved quickly but not carelessly. She knew someone would follow. Vel covered in 1 hour what had taken the human 3. By midnight, the Krath had closed half the distance. The trail led deeper into the forest, away from anything resembling civilization. Good. No witnesses, no complications. Just hunter and prey as it should be. The first trap appeared 2 hours past midnight. Vel found G1's abandoned camp in a small clearing, a portable shelter still radiating heat, a fire pit with warm ashes, food wrappers scattered carelessly. Every sign suggested the human had rested here recently and left in a hurry. Vel approached carefully. Centuries of hunting experience whispered warnings, but the Krath's pride was louder. The human was exhausted, making mistakes. The hunt would end soon. Vel stepped into the clearing. Nothing happened. The Krath scanned the area, thermal vision picking up no hidden threats. Vel moved toward the shelter to search for tracking data. The trap sprang without warning. Not an explosion or a weapon, but something far more creative. The ground beneath Vel's rear limbs gave way, and suddenly the Krath was standing in a shallow pool. The liquid was warm, almost hot, and for a moment Vel didn't understand. Then the pain started. The pool wasn't water. It was the acidic runoff from the trees above, channeled and collected by the human over hours of careful work. The acid that the colonists feared concentrated and directed into this one spot. Vel roared and launched itself out of the pool. The acid burned through the Krath's natural armor, causing real damage. Not fatal, not even truly dangerous, but painful, and more than that, humiliating. Vel had walked straight into the simplest trap imaginable. The Krath spun thermal vision searching for the human. There, in the trees 50 meters away, a heat signature human-sized, completely still, Jiwan was watching. First blood to the prey, Vel called out in the human language. It will be your last. The heat signature moved and Jiwan's voice came back. You're hunting me on my world in my forest. Every step you take I've already walked. Every danger here I know. You're stronger and faster, but I belong here. You don't. Then she was gone, disappearing into the wilderness like she had never been there at all. Vel stood in the clearing, acid still burning, and felt something the Krath hadn't experienced in decades. Uncertainty. The human hadn't fought. She hadn't run in panic. She had used the terrain itself as a weapon, and then delivered a message before vanishing. This was not how hunts were supposed to go. Vel began tracking again, more carefully now. The Krath's regenerative abilities were already healing the acid burns, but the lesson remained. This prey was different. This prey thought like a predator. The trail continued east, deeper into the dangerous heart of New Jeju's wilderness. Jiwan was leading Vel somewhere specific. The Krath knew this, understood it was likely another trap, but there was no choice. The contract demanded the target's death, and Vel had never failed. As the night deepened and the bioluminescent forest came alive with its eerie glow, Vel pressed forward. The human's trail was harder to follow now. She was moving through water, masking her thermal signature with mud and plant materials, choosing paths through the densest vegetation. She was good, better than most prey Vel had hunted. But good wasn't enough. The Krath were apex predators for a reason. They didn't give up. They didn't tire. They didn't fail. Dawn came slowly on New Jeju, the twin suns rising through toxic clouds. Vel had been hunting for 12 hours straight, and had barely closed the distance on the human. Jiwan moved like she knew Vel was coming, always staying just ahead, always leaving trails that led through the worst terrain. The Krath found the second trap at sunrise. This time it wasn't acid, but a carefully destabilized rock slide. Vel triggered it and had to use all 8 limbs to avoid being buried. When the dust settled, the human was gone again and Vel had lost another hour. The hunt continued through the first day. Vel found 3 more traps, each one different, each one exploiting the environment in creative ways. The human never attacked directly. She never tried to fight. She just made the forest itself into her weapon. By nightfall of the first day, Vel had to acknowledge an uncomfortable truth. The human wasn't running. She was fighting, and she was winning. The Krath settled in a sheltered position as the acid rain began to fall. Vel's armor could handle it, but there was no point in taking unnecessary damage. The human was out there somewhere, probably sheltered as well, planning her next move. Vel had hunted for 500 years. The Krath had tracked prey across every kind of terrain and every kind of condition, but Jiwan Park was different. She didn't behave like prey. She behaved like a predator defending her territory. This would not be a simple hunt. This would be a war. The second day began with Vel adapting. The Krath had learned from the first day's mistakes. No more walking into obvious traps. No more assuming the human would behave like normal prey. Jiwan Park was a predator in her own right, and Vel would treat her as such. The tracking resumed at dawn. This time Vel moved more slowly, scanning every step, testing every surface. The human's trail led through a section of forest where the trees grew so thick that the glowing branches formed a canopy overhead, beautiful and deadly, like everything on this world. Vel used thermal imaging to track Jiwan's heat signature. The technology was advanced, capable of detecting body heat through most obstacles. But something was wrong. The trail was there, but it was faint, flickering in and out of Vel's vision like a ghost. The Krath stopped and analyzed the situation. The human was coating herself with something that masked her thermal signature. Plant sap perhaps, or mud with particular properties. Clever. Most prey never thought to hide from thermal vision. Most prey didn't know how. Vel switched to alternative tracking methods. Broken branches, disturbed soil, the faint chemical traces that all living creatures left behind. It was slower, more primitive, but it worked. The human was 3 hours ahead now, moving steadily east toward the most dangerous parts of the forest. What Vel didn't realize was that Jiwan had stopped running. Somewhere during the night, she had made a decision. If she kept fleeing, the Krath would eventually catch her. Vel was faster, stronger, and nearly tireless. The only way to survive was to change the nature of the hunt itself. Jiwan had become the hunter. She watched Vel from a concealed position in the trees. The Krath was massive, impressive, terrifying. But Jiwan had spent 2 years watching the predators of New Jeju. She understood how they moved, how they thought, how they could be beaten. The key wasn't strength. The key was patience and precision. Vel moved through the forest below her, thermal vision scanning, 8 limbs carrying its bulk with surprising grace. Jiwan noticed something important. The Krath favored its forward limbs when moving through dense areas. The rear limbs were powerful but less precise, and there was a blind spot, a small angle where Vel's multiple eyes couldn't quite see. Information. That was the real weapon. Every observation was data. Every pattern was a weakness to exploit. Jiwan let Vel pass beneath her position without attacking. This wasn't the right moment. She needed the Krath deeper into the dangerous territory, farther from any possibility of retreat. She needed Vel tired, frustrated, and angry. The trail Jiwan left became more obvious over the next few hours. She wanted Vel to follow. She wanted the Krath to think it was closing in. The tracks led through a section of forest where the ground looked solid but wasn't, where centuries of organic decay had created a crust over pockets of caustic mud. Vel found the trail at midday and followed it with renewed confidence. The human was making mistakes now, leaving clear signs. The end was approaching. The ground gave way without warning. One moment Vel was on solid earth, the next the Krath was sinking into thick, burning mud. The caustic mixture was similar to the acid trap from the first night, but worse, thicker, hotter, clinging to Vel's armor and working its way into gaps. Vel roared and thrashed, trying to find purchase. The mud was deep, reaching up to the Krath's thorax. Each movement seemed to pull Vel deeper. Panic and emotion the Krath rarely felt began to creep into Vel's mind. Then Jiwan appeared at the edge of the pit. She stood 10 meters away, rifle in hand but not aimed. Her face was calm, studying the situation like a scientist observing an experiment. "You don't have to die here," Jiwan said in perfect Krath language. The clicking, harsh sounds came from her throat with surprising accuracy. "But if you keep hunting me, this planet will kill you. I've survived here for 2 years. How long do you think you'll last?" Vel stopped thrashing and focused on the human. "You speak my language." "I speak 6 languages," Jiwan replied. "I also speak the language of this forest. Every trap, every danger, every way to die that this world offers. I know them all, do you?" The Krath's multiple eyes narrowed. "I do not need to know this world. I only need to know how to kill you. Then try," Jiwan said simply. "But understand something. I'm not running anymore, from this moment on. Every step you take toward me is a step closer to your own death." She turned and walked away, disappearing into the forest. Behind her, Vel roared in rage and began to tear free from the mud pit. The Krath's incredible strength prevailed, but at a cost. One of Vel's rear limbs remained stuck, trapped in the caustic mud. Vel had to choose between staying trapped and losing the limb. The Krath chose survival. With a brutal twist, Vel severed the trapped limb and dragged itself out of the pit. The regeneration would take days, maybe weeks. But that didn't matter. The contract remained. The prey still lived, but now Vel understood. This wasn't a hunt. This was war. The rest of the second day became a nightmare for Vel. Jiwan didn't run, didn't hide. She stalked. She led Vel through one environmental hazard after another. Acid pools on stable ground, areas where the local wildlife was most aggressive. She never attacked directly, never exposed herself to real danger. She just made the forest itself into an endless gauntlet of death. By nightfall, Vel had lost the limb, suffered multiple acid burns, and been attacked by local predators that Jiwan had somehow led into the Krath's path. Nothing was fatal. Everything was painful and exhausting. Vel found shelter in a rocky outcrop as the second acid rain began. The Krath was injured, tired, and for the first time in 500 years of hunting, genuinely uncertain about the outcome. The human had taught Vel a lesson. On her world, in her territory, with her knowledge, Jiwan Park was the apex predator, not because she was stronger or faster, but because she belonged here in a way Vel never could. The Krath's pride demanded completion of the contract. But Vel's survival instincts, honed over centuries, whispered a different message. This prey was different. This prey was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with physical strength. As the rain fell and the night deepened, Vel began to truly consider that the impossible might happen. A Krath might fail a hunt, and if Vel continued pursuing this human with the same tactics, failure was becoming more likely with every passing hour. The human had said she wasn't running anymore. Vel believed her. The question was, what would the Krath do about it? The third day began with the worst acid rain New Jeju had seen in months. The toxic water fell in sheets, turning the forest into a place where even Jiwan struggled to survive. She had found shelter in a cave system she'd mapped during her first year on the planet, deep dry with multiple chambers and escape routes. It was as safe as anywhere could be on this world. She didn't expect Vel to keep hunting in these conditions. The smart move would be to wait out the storm, preserve strength, and resume when the rain stopped. But Jiwan was learning that Krath pride was stronger than Krath common sense. The sound came 2 hours after dawn. A deep rhythmic pounding. Something massive was tearing through stone to reach the cave. Vel had tracked her here and was now literally ripping through the mountain to complete the hunt. Jiwan moved deeper into the cave system, but Vel was relentless. The pounding continued, growing closer. Rock dust filled the air. The Krath was injured, missing a limb, exhausted from 2 days of constant hunting through hostile terrain. And still it came. The cave-in happened suddenly. Jiwan had prepared for this possibility, had placed charges weeks ago as part of her defensive planning. She triggered them remotely, and tons of rock came down between her and Vel. The pounding stopped. For a moment, there was only silence and settling dust. Then Jiwan heard breathing on the other side of the collapse. Heavy, labored, but alive, Vel had survived. They were trapped in the same cave system but separated by fallen rock. The acid rain above made any attempt to dig out suicidal. They were stuck here together until the storm passed. "Are you alive, human?" Vel's voice came through the rocks, muffled but clear. "Still breathing," Jiwan replied. She sat down with her back against the cool stone. "You don't quit, do you? Krath do not fail hunts. You're down a limb, burned by acid, and trapped in a cave. How's that not failing?" There was a long pause. Then Vel spoke again, and this time there was something different in the voice. Not quite humor, but not pure hostility either. "The hunt is not over. You still live." Jiwan laughed despite herself. "You know what? I respect that. Stupid, but I respect it." Another pause. The rain pounded outside, a constant reminder that neither of them could leave. Time stretched out. Jiwan checked her supplies. Water for 3 days, food for 5 if she rationed. Her medical kit was running low, but she could manage. The real question was whether Vel could survive in there. "Why did you come to New Jeju?" Vel asked suddenly. The question surprised Jiwan. "You want to talk now?" "We have time. And I have never spoken with prey before killing it." "You are different." "I wish to understand why." Jiwan considered not answering. But trapped in a cave with nothing to do but wait, conversation seemed better than silence. "I came because humans explore. That's what we do. We left Earth because we wanted to see what was out there. Some people thought we were crazy. Maybe we are. Your species is weak. No natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities. Yet you spread across the galaxy. How?" "We're persistent," Jiwan said. "We don't win by being the strongest. We win by refusing to quit, by adapting, by using our brains when our bodies aren't enough." "I have hunted for 500 years, Vel said. I have killed prey on 100 worlds. None have survived. None have fought like you fight. That's because you've never hunted a human on human terms before. You've hunted us in space stations, on your worlds, in controlled environments. Here on New Jeju, this is my territory. I make the rules." The conversation continued through the morning. Vel told Jiwan about the Krath homeworld, a place of constant predation where only the strongest survive to adulthood. About a culture built entirely around the hunt, where identity came from the ability to track and kill. For a Krath, not hunting wasn't just failure. It was becoming nothing. Jiwan told Vel about Earth, about a species that evolved not as the strongest predators, but as persistence hunters. About ancient humans who would chase prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. about a species that survived not through strength but through endurance and intelligence. "We're not so different," Jiwan said at one point. "You hunt because it's who you are. I survive because it's who I am. We're both predators, just different kinds." "You are prey," Vel insisted, but there was less certainty in the voice now. "Am I? You've been hunting me for almost 3 days. You're injured, exhausted, and trapped. I'm sitting here comfortable and supplied. Who's hunting who right now?" Vel made a sound that might have been Krath laughter. "You make a valid point." The rain continued outside. Hours passed. The conversation moved from conflict to something stranger. Not quite friendship, but mutual respect. Two predators from different worlds trapped together, learning that they understood each other better than either expected. "Tell me about the greatest hunt you ever completed," Jiwan asked. Vel described tracking a cybernetically enhanced assassin through an asteroid field. A hunt that lasted 3 weeks and covered 2 systems. The assassin had been brilliant, but in the end, no one escaped a Krath. "Tell me about your greatest survival," Vel countered. Jiwan described her first year on New Jeju, learning which plants could be eaten and which would kill, figuring out how to predict the acid rains, discovering which predators could be avoided and which had to be fought. She had lost colonists, people she cared about, learning lessons written in blood. "You speak of your people with affection," Vel observed. "Yet you chose to face me alone rather than let me come to the colony. Why?" "Because leadership means taking the danger yourself. Those colonists have families, children. They came here to build something, not to die because the Vrelians got tired of diplomatic solutions. The Vrelians are cowards," Vel said with contempt. "They hire others to do what they fear to do themselves. You took their contract. I am a hunter. The contract is irrelevant. The hunt itself is what matters." Jiwan thought about that. "So what happens when this hunt ends? Assuming one of us survives? The contract states you must die. The contract says you have to eliminate me. Doesn't specify how." There was a very long silence from Vel's side of the collapsed tunnel. When the Krath spoke again, the voice was thoughtful. "You suggest an alternative outcome. I'm suggesting that maybe the hunt doesn't have to end the way everyone expects." The rain began to ease outside. In a few hours, they would both be able to dig out and leave the cave. The 3rd day was ending, and the contract's deadline was approaching. Decisions would have to be made soon. The rain stopped just before sunset on the 3rd day. Jiwan and Vel worked together to clear the cave-in, neither speaking about the strangeness of prey and hunter cooperating. Jiwan used her explosives to weaken key points in the rockfall. Vel used its massive strength to move the debris. Within 2 hours, they had created an opening large enough for both of them to escape. They emerged into the twilight forest, both exhausted, both changed by 3 days of conflict. Vel stood on 7 limbs, the missing one slowly regenerating but still weeks from being fully functional. Jiwan was covered in cuts, bruises, and the grime of 3 days in the wilderness. They looked at each other across 10 meters of open ground. "The contract ends at midnight," Vel said. 4 hours remain, so what happens now?" Jiwan asked. Her hand rested near her rifle, but she didn't draw it. "We fight? After everything we've talked about?" Vel was quiet for a long moment. The Krath's multiple eyes studied Jiwan with an intensity that went beyond hunting. "I have learned something in these 3 days. Something I did not expect to learn." "What's that?" "That prey and predator are sometimes the same thing, depending on who chooses the ground for battle. That strength takes many forms. That honor can exist between enemies." Jiwan waited. This was Vel's decision to make. "There is a term in Krath culture," Vel continued. "Kaltor. It means prey that transcends the hunt. Prey that demonstrates such skill, such courage, such worthiness that to kill them would be to destroy something valuable. In 500 years I have never declared Kaltor. No prey has ever earned it. Until now?" Jiwan asked quietly. "Until now," Vel confirmed. "By Krath law I can return to the Vrelians and declare the contract fulfilled without your death. But I must carry proof. I must carry your gear as trophy to show that I bested you in combat even if I chose to grant you life." Jiwan considered this. She thought about the colonists waiting for news, about Tai Sung and the others who expected her to die. She thought about the Vrelians and their smug certainty that hiring a Krath would solve their problems. She thought about what message she wanted to send to the galaxy. "If you declare me Kaltor, what does that mean for other humans?" "It means the Krath species recognizes humans as worthy adversaries. No Krath will accept simple assassination contracts against your kind again. If we hunt humans in the future, it will be with the understanding that we face equals, not prey. And the Vrelians will believe you are dead. I will carry your gear as proof. They will pay the contract and consider the matter settled. What they do not know is that Kaltor allows the prey to live. It is a hunter's secret, not meant for those who hire us. Jiwan smiled. It was the first real smile she'd had in 3 days. You know what? I think I like this plan. But I have one condition. Speak. I want to send a message with my gear. A recording the Vrelians will find when they examine everything. A message that explains exactly what happened here and what it means. Vel's mandibles clicked in what might have been approval. That is acceptable. In fact, I would enjoy seeing their faces when they discover the truth. Jiwan began removing her combat vest, her rifle, her field pack. Everything that identified her as the target went into a pile at Vel's feet. Then she pulled out her personal recorder and made one final recording. This message is for the Vrelian High Council, she began, her voice clear and strong. You hired the best hunter in the galaxy to kill me. But you made a mistake. You assumed that because humans don't have natural armor or weapons, we're weak. You assumed that being prey is the same as being helpless. 3 days ago, you sent a Krath to eliminate me. Today I stand here alive because I taught the Krath what every predator in the galaxy needs to learn. Humans don't survive by being the strongest. We survive by being smarter, more adaptable, and too stubborn to quit. We turn our environment into a weapon. We learn, we adapt, we persist. You wanted to make an example of me. Instead, you've made an example of yourselves. You've shown the galaxy that underestimating humans is a fatal mistake. The Krath won't hunt us for simple contracts anymore. Maybe you should consider why that is before you make any more decisions about New Jeju Colony. Captain Jiwan Park, signing off. She placed the recorder in her vest pocket and handed everything to Vel. The Krath gathered the gear carefully, treating it with the respect due to a worthy opponent's possessions. What will you do now? Vel asked. Go back to my colony. Tell them what happened. Probably have a very long shower and sleep for about 20 hours. And if the Vrelians send other threats? Jiwan's smile turned sharp. Let them try. We'll show them what happens when you corner a human. We don't break. We adapt, we survive. And apparently we make friends with the monsters they send to kill us. Vel made that clicking sound again. Definitely Krath laughter this time. I would not call us friends, no? What would you call it? Mutual respect between worthy adversaries. Perhaps in time it could become more. They stood in the glowing forest, predator and prey who had somehow become something else entirely. As the moons rose over New Jeju, Vel turned to leave. The Krath moved slowly, carefully, 7 limbs carrying its massive bulk with weary grace. Vel, Jiwan called out. The Krath stopped and looked back. If you're ever in this sector again and you're not being paid to kill me, stop by the colony. I'll buy you a drink, or whatever Krath consume that's equivalent. I may take you up on that offer, Jiwan Park. You have given me the greatest hunt of my life. That is a gift I will not forget. Then Vel was gone, disappearing into the forest with Jiwan's gear. The Krath would return to the Vrelian station, present the evidence, collect the payment, and spread the word throughout the Krath hunting clans. Humans were now Kaltor species-wide. No simple assassination contracts. Only hunts between equals. Jiwan started the long walk back to the colony. Her body ached, her supplies were depleted, and she looked like she'd been fighting the entire planet for 3 days, which she supposed she had been. Tae Sung and the others met her at the eastern gate just before dawn. They stared at her like she was a ghost. In a way, she supposed she was. Ghosts of everyone's expectations of what should have happened when a Krath came hunting. The contract? Tae Sung asked, his voice barely a whisper. Fulfilled, Jiwan said, just not the way anyone expected. She told them everything as they walked to the command center. About the 3 days of hunting. The traps, the battle of wills and wits, the conversation in the cave. About Kaltor and what it meant for humanity's future in the galaxy. So we're safe? Someone asked. The Vrelians think you're dead? For now, Jiwan confirmed. And when they find out the truth, they'll know that killing one human costs more than they're willing to pay. We're not easy prey. We're not worth the trouble. Maybe they'll finally accept that New Jeju isn't theirs to control. 2 weeks later, a package arrived at the colony, dropped by unmarked ship during the night. Inside was Jiwan's gear, cleaned and repaired with careful attention. Her vest had been mended with materials stronger than the original. Her rifle had been serviced and upgraded. Her pack had been restocked with supplies, and wrapped carefully in protective cloth was something else. A crystalline scale easily the size of G1's hand removed from Vel's own armor. A Krath honor token. No message accompanied it, but none was needed. The hunt was over, but the respect remained. Haye Jin, the colony's defense coordinator, found G1 on the eastern wall that evening, watching the forest glow in the twilight. "What are you thinking about, Captain?" G1 held the Krath scale up to the light, watching it refract the bioluminescent glow of the forest. "I'm thinking that we came to the stars because we refused to be limited by our world. We survived because we adapted to every challenge. And now we've taught the galaxy's greatest hunters that humans aren't prey. We're survivors, and survivors can be more dangerous than any predator. What if they send something else? Something worse than a Krath?" G1 smiled and tucked the scale into her pocket. "Let them send whatever they want. We'll do what we always do. We'll learn its weaknesses. We'll use our intelligence. We'll adapt to the challenge. And we'll survive because that's what humans do. We don't win by being the strongest. We win by refusing to lose." Below them, the colony lights began to come on as night fell. Children played in the streets. Families gathered for evening meals. Engineers and farmers and soldiers went about their lives. Building something on a hostile world, making a home where none should exist, that was humanity's real strength. Not weapons or technology or physical prowess, just the absolute, stubborn, magnificent refusal to give up. The will to survive anything the universe could throw at them and somehow make friends with the monsters along the way. G1 Park stood on the wall and smiled. Let the galaxy learn what that meant. Let them all learn what happened when you sent a hunter after a human. You might get your contract fulfilled, but you'd never get the outcome you expected. And somewhere out in the vast darkness of space, a Krath hunter carried human gear as a trophy of respect, spreading the word to every predator species in the galaxy. Humans are Kaltor. Hunt them as equals or don't hunt them at all.